Three, two, one. So welcome everybody to the sub-budget meeting before the board meeting, and we have one of our trustees and our staff to answer questions before the meeting. And Trustee Burke.
Hi, everyone. I suspect it will be a short meeting. There's not a lot specific to the budget or construction, although, as we know, everything is always related to the budget and spending money or saving money somehow. So I just had a couple of questions. Mostly on one is I was very happy to see that we're putting back, reinstating the custodial staff, and wondering if somehow that this, it's coming from our general fund, but is there anything that we will get reimbursed for through AB 77 or the feds to reinstate those positions?
I don't believe so, and Marcus or Raiz, Robbie can probably follow up with more detail. The bill is just stating that after July 1st, no certificated or classified layoffs specific to transportation, child nutrition, and custodians will not be allowed for layoffs. But I didn't read any legislation that they're going to refund or provide grants or money for those positions. Marcus and Raiz or Robbie, did you hear anything else to that?
No, I have not heard anything to that effect. No.
I have not heard of anything to that effect.
So there's no possible reimbursement or anything. Okay. And then related to that, in terms of the reopening, there was a question about transportation that related to money that I was confused about what the state is mandating that we have to do opposed to what we typically do for transportation. So I was confused on the task force comments, because that's all I had to work on regarding transportation and funding for that. And that's item 14.4. And just as an aside, Anne has said, sorry, having computer trouble, go ahead.
14.4.
And Michelle, was your question regarding the cost per student to transport according to state recommendations will be $108 per day per student on Fremont buses, and whether or not that would be reimbursed by the state? Does that sound familiar?
Yes, and I'm looking in this big thick document.
Yeah, and we and Charlie did get a chance to respond to that question earlier, and he said based on the manner in which we will have to transport students, he is estimating that it will cost us $108 per child per day to transport, whereas our normal cost is about $46 per student per day.
Oh, okay. I think that was the missing piece of information that I didn't have.
It's also based on the social distancing that the bus driver will have to take with the students. So that's going to be a challenge.
So it's almost triple what it normally takes. Let's say we were in a typical situation, it costs $46 per student per day.
That's what he's stating, yes.
Okay. And we know that we don't get reimbursed fully for that anyway, right? We don't get a full $46 back for anything. And
right.
Whatever we are charging for our students who don't have an IEP, if they're taking the bus, we don't recoup a lot of that cost as well, correct?
Right.
So if now it's going to cost almost triple what we normally would pay per student per day,
I think it's double.
double 46
Yeah.
to 108. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm panicking. We don't have, I mean, where would that money come from? Right? I mean, that has to come from the general fund.
That's correct.
Oh, Marcus Zion is asking if you can let him in, please.
Okay.
Hi, Zion.
Hello.
Nice
Hi.
to see you.
Nice to see you too.
So Zion, we're on, we've kind of gone down and we're on 14.4, which is just preparing for the opening of next year. And there's tons of questions, but specific to budget, I was asking about transportation costs. And let me see if I can explain it to make sure that I understood it correctly. What Mr. Battle explained is it typically costs us $46 per student per day. Given all the new guidelines and rules we'll have to follow, the cost will go up to about $108 per student per day. As a district, we already are subsidizing our transportation costs a lot. And so my question was, wow, this isn't reimbursable. So where does the money come from? And Mr. Battle, with a very straight face, said the general fund. Did I capture it correctly, everybody?
Yep. I think so.
Kind of on that, I think someone from SURF who was on the transportation subcommittee said that in the school buses themselves, like the number of people would be limited. So for example, in a large bus, there'd only be like 10 people, or I forgot the exact number. So would that in a way kind of limit our costs?
It won't limit our, increase our costs.
Or well, because if it's like $120 or $108 per student, and you only have like 10 students per bus, compared to if you have $40 per student and there's like 30 kids on a bus, what it would normally be, wouldn't it? Like it would be less cost.
So if you think about it, let's say we have to transport 100 students and we would take one trip to transport those students. Now it's going to take us 10 trips to transport those 100 students. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So the cost is going to go up
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we have more rides that we will have to provide. And if
Mhm.
we assume that we have to provide those 10, those cohorts of 10, if we have to get them to a similar kind of location at the same time, that means we can't have, we might not necessarily be able to provide that, and then we'd have to contract out, I assume, to help provide that support service to students.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
okay. Okay. My other question was about Infinite, which is 14.7, and the agreement, so it didn't, I was just wondering who was involved in that decision making, because it's obviously a large contract, and that the weight, it didn't seem like it was necessarily, it got the best score. So I wondered what other variables went into making the decision to recommend Infinite, and also how that dovetails with, I guess, transitioning from Illuminate.
So, and I know Lucas is planning to provide a detailed discussion on this on Wednesday. But if you look at the scores were actually very, very close between the top three. And he reviewed this. This went through a technical review panel. Then it went through subject matter review, which involved teachers and principals and staff. And it was a large group of people that were involved. in the ratings and the scorings. But in the end, with the score so close, the way Lucas explained it to us was that that there were some value added items within the proposal that is going forward. And I know that he will be able to discuss those in more detail because it was some technical things that we are definitely going to need as and I know some of the reporting that we're going to have to do this fall because of the new requirements. This system will help us. And I don't know if it's enrollment management. I don't want to say the wrong terms, but I know that there is some increased functionality that we don't have that I know is the system has, and he'll be able to speak to that on Wednesday. Michelle.
Okay. Thank you. On 15.8, which is the Rick Sklankler, Kelly, I appreciate the presentation, and it says we're on target for opening. We had planned to open this fall. Correct?
No, if you recall, the schedule was revised. We did a presentation for you all in the initial ask of the additional scope. So that Rick Sklankler is not going to be ready until fall 2021
Okay.
for them to occupy.
Okay. Right. All right. Where was it that I read? It said this is on target.
It's on target based on our revised schedule that was
Revised,
approved
got
by
it.
you all
Okay.
in February. Yeah.
All right.
I can make that clarification though if you need me to.
Sure. I think during, when we have the conversation on Wednesday. And that was actually it from me. There wasn't that much. Zion, did you have any other questions that you wanted to ask?
I don't think so. Yeah. Or specific to budget, I didn't have any, but everything else we have to ask during. If it's not pertaining to budget, can I ask here, or is that for the meeting?
Well, we have the money people here. So
Okay.
if it's like a curriculum question, they wouldn't necessarily be able to answer that.
Yeah, I was just, we just had our surf meeting. There's a lot of questions on 14.4, but I'll ask that on Wednesday.
I think it's probably a good idea. Because 14.4 was something that so many people were involved in, and we just have a slice of those people here in this meeting. Okay, and I guess there's always the standing question: do we have any other updated information from the state? And I'm assuming not.
I think the latest legislation that's coming through is to provide liability protection for local education agencies. However, that's going to be postponed until the Senate reconvenes later on this month. But I think that's the latest, like as of maybe this past week, that I've seen come out that's new, but nothing else as far as anything else from AB 77 or the Senate bill.
Okay.
We are getting, Raul, I think we also are getting further clarification on the whole, the distance learning piece, because there was great confusion around the state on that. And from what I've seen, I know Capital Advisors came out with something today, still further defining what it means. And I don't think it means anything different than what Raul explained before. I think districts will be unable to, my understanding, districts will be unable to unilaterally go distance learning. They will have to have traditional instruction and distance learning on a case-by-case basis, which is, and almost have to have an option to be able to provide distance learning to students who may need that based on a medical reason or something to that effect.
Unless the county says,
Right.
so if the county says you can't go back, then we're okay with going fully distance learning.
That's correct.
So is that bill like finalized or passed, or is that like confirmed?
Yes, that's the latest. I don't want to say interpretation, but that's the latest information we have. And
So
again, you just have to keep in mind that it's going to change.
Mhm.
I'm almost guaranteed it's going to change in August, in some portion or another. So we just have to make sure that we work on our plans so that we have something in place and we modify just a tiny bit if we need to as we go forward.
Okay, so on Wednesday, in terms of like voting on 14.4, the board would have to vote on one of the hybrid options, or is distance learning like not a votable option?
What we're asking the board to do is to give us direction and sort of the push forward to say, all right, continue working on the hybrid model and also continue working on the distance learning model so that we get to refine it even further. What you see listed in the board doc are examples of what a hybrid model may look like. There's still some more areas that we'll need to modify and put together. So this is just our first look at this, because I need the board to start looking at this and start thinking about it and processing so that staff has more direction to, yes, continue with the hybrid model, continue with distance learning, and we just have to devise this plan and set it in place so when school starts in the fall, we have something there.
Okay.
And your point is well taken, Raul. No matter what we say on Wednesday, I mean, I don't mean to be so glib about it, but we may give direction that on Thursday will change. But you're to have plans in place so that whichever way we need to pivot, we can confidently August. And I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more information, you know, data that's been collected and shared and surveys that have been done by various groups. So we'll have and I'm sure you guys, Zion, that SURF has a lot of questions and you know, solutions and suggestions as well. So we're going to be spending a lot of time on that particular item to sift through and understand it better. Okay, well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. You're all very gracious to be here on a Monday afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for everything. Be seeing you on Wednesday evening.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
All right. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.